Hey guys, it's Curator Chats.
Sorry, I didn't know how to introduce this. I was just like, eh. So I'm Hope.
And I'm Lindsay. I'm the Curator of Collections.
And I'm the Curator of Education. And we are here in the somewhat dreary today education room.
I mean, it's gray. If it's going to be gray, it needs to rain. That's my opinion. It needs to rain or snow.
Snow.
I mean, yes, but if it's going to be gray, it needs to do something because rain puts me to sleep, which is great at night. Not really during the workday. Or it needs to snow.
Yes.
And we can have a beautiful winter wonderland.
That's my dream.
Instead of just being cloudy.
That is my dream. So today, we are here to talk to you about Black History Month. And we are well into February.
I thought you were looking at your scrunchie for a minute. There's a watch behind the scrunchie.
So I was like, I don't know why I did that. I know that it's February 9th. So we are well into February at this point.
Yes.
So, and in case you didn't know, February is Black History Month.
Yes.
You should know that. So now you do. February is Black History Month.
Yeah, I think I would say most people know February is Black History Month. I think less people know March is Women's History Month.
Yes. And
which is fun.
Black History Month in the United States. It's
right.
Not worldwide. It's only in the United States. So,
does anywhere else have a Black History Month anytime?
I am not sure, because I wasn't sure like what it was, but I saw someone that I know in the UK posted it was LGBTQ History Month in the UK.
Okay.
And it is Black History Month in America, so I was like...
Okay. I just didn't know if with social media and all of that, it would have caught on in other countries with, hashtag Black History Month and everything going around on Twitter and
true.
That sort of thing for the past several years.
I'm not sure. That's something to look into.
That's true.
We'll look it up and let you know.
We'll have to do a follow-up with all the questions we pose and then...
Because sometimes we're just woefully unprepared.
Yes.
Or we ask questions and then we're like, yeah, I didn't look that up, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I think it is more professional to be willing to admit that you don't know something.
Yeah, and say
than to pretend you don't.
I'll look it up and
to pretend you do.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, the pretend you do strategy happens way too much in the US. And it's too often rewarded.
It really is. There's no shame in admitting that you don't know something.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the biggest things that you should learn, like growing up in America, is that there is no shame in admitting that you don't know something. If you willfully don't know, that is to be shamed.
Yeah.
But if you just don't know the answer to a question, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest growing up I ever had to do.
Yeah, and knowing when you're wrong.
Yeah.
I hate to admit that I'm wrong, but I will.
Yeah, I usually will.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes mid-argument I'm like, like we're gonna fight it out now.
Mid-argument, I'm still going. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, Black History Month. Hope. Why do we need a Black History Month?
Well, I would say, I think Black history is American history.
Yes.
Like, there's so much American history, and I know that there's a debate going on about, like, should it be a month or should it just be really included in American history, and I think it should be both. Yeah. I think that it should definitely be included in American history. A lot of times it is not. It is glossed over, it is ignored, and that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I do appreciate that it is being highlighted all across social media and everything else. We're learning about Black inventors, Black authors, Black movements, and all kinds of things throughout history. But I think that those things should be looked at all year long as well. I don't think that you should take 1 month and be like, I'm going to support something for 28 days because it's the shortest month of the year. I'm going to support something for 28 days and then I'm going to move on. Like, this is...
Black History Month kind of got screwed, didn't it? It got the shortest month of the year.
Shortest month of the year.
Couldn't give it October with 31 days.
No. It's got to be the shortest month of the year, apparently. And also the month where people worry about things like Valentine's Day or Mardi Gras or whatever.
Well, I mean, most months have something that you're really concerned about.
That's true. March, doesn't it?
St. Patrick's Day and often Easter.
That's true. Never mind.
Easter does April and March sometimes.
That's true. So, yeah. So what do you think? Why should we
Maybe
have
September.
September, there's nothing left.
Labor Day, and that's in the beginning, so.
Yeah. Something to think about.
Yeah, September, and that's got 30 days, right?
30 or 31? I never remember. them. I never remember. I just know.
August.
True.
31.
Yeah, and there's nothing. We can never
So,
interrupted.
in my opinion, I would love to work to move forward to a place where we don't need history months that highlight certain individuals, because that's kind of a utopian paradigm.
Or whatever.
No, I was going to say paradise.
Yeah. Okay, I understand what
Future.
Yeah.
A utopian future would be where we don't need a history month to highlight the contributions of minority groups. That would be the ultimate utopia. That would be Star Trek. Yeah, which is basically a utopian future.
Where you learn everything that you need to know and should know just because it's important.
And their contributions, you don't even have to highlight them because it's already within the curriculum. But I think that's a long way off.
I agree. I think that's a long way off too.
And so I think it's important to have a Black History Month. You know, you get people who say, well, Black people never invented anything. I'm sorry, would you like your list chronologically or alphabetically?
Yeah. It's so ridiculous. Like, I know that right now I am participating in a Black author readathon that was done on like YouTube and Instagram and everything. Mm-hmm. And its goal is to like highlight Black authors, especially in romance, because they're often so overlooked. And I've read 5 books right now, and they've all been really good.
Yeah.
And like everybody should be reading these books, not like why are they? But I will say this. And I think this is something I've never noticed before. So I was looking up these books on Goodreads, right? So one of them that has been really popular, it's been going around everywhere, was called Get a Life, Chloe Brown. And when I would type those books into Goodreads, even if they were already on my read shelf, so I'd already marked them, they would tell me, we can't find this title. It happened to every single book that I typed in by a Black author. Yeah. Yeah.
Has that ever happened with any other book you've done?
Not that I've noticed. I'm trying to pay closer attention now. But I did notice that happened, and I did a TBR video for this, and I did talk about it in my personal video about the issues that I had finding these books to put the covers on, like, in a video. And I just thought that was extremely strange. That's almost like a shadow ban. I don't know if it's just me that this has happened to, but I did notice that the other day when I was on Saturday.
Were you able to find them via author?
Not always, no.
So, did they just not have them on Goodreads?
No, I was able to find them on Goodreads later. I went back to my personal shelves where I'd already marked the books. But when I was, like, typing them in, I couldn't.
And that's never happened with, like, another book? Like, you've already read it, and then you go back to find the cover, and it's never happened before?
No. Not in I would say, I've looked up 10 books. If that happened 2 or 3 times, I could definitely say, user error. You know, like, yeah. But it happened with every single book. So, I mean, just little things like that.
Get on that Goodreads.
Yeah, and like I said, I did ask. No one has told me if they had that problem but I had that problem. And I use Goodreads every single day.
Yeah.
So, it's like little things like that. Or, like, if that's intentional, like, I will not use Goodreads again. If that was an intentional thing. I don't feel like 10 times is really a user error, but you never know.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's... And, yeah, I found that Saturday, so...
So, what do you think of the teaching of Black History Month, like, as its educational status? So when you go into classrooms, how they teach Black History Month. I mean, and if in your experience they do.
In my experience, they did not.
Okay. I don't. In my experience, they did.
Okay, I do not ever. So I went to school in Louisiana.
I went in Ohio and then Tennessee.
I do not ever recall going into a classroom and learning about Black History Month.
Okay. I mean, we didn't learn about Black History Month as in like the history of Black History Month when it started or anything. But every February we would like have a little focus.
I don't ever remember that happening.
Okay.
And Lindsay and I were in the same grades at the same time.
Yeah, we are 5 days apart in age. So
yeah, so like we would remember. I don't ever remember that.
Because I remember having like Black History Month. We'd have little posters, at least in my elementary school, if I recall. posters about Black History Month, but it was always, for me, it was always the same things. Like, I always learned about the same figures over and over and over again. You always learned about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks.
Which is basically that's what I remember learning for, like, Black history. Rosa Parks sat on the bus, and this whole movement started, and then it was fine, and that's it.
Yeah, so I learned about, we would highlight that stuff during Black History Month. You know, it's like in the library they would have posters of like Martin Luther King, and they would put out like little scholastic books or whatever that were Black history books or Black authors or about Black characters.
Okay.
I don't really remember necessarily I just remember seeing this like Black History Month books in my little school library that they would highlight on like an end cap.
Okay, we know that.
Okay.
And in history class, I don't ever remember really talking about it. I mean, like, I remember some names that we would talk about, like George Washington Carver, Harriet Tubman.
Yep. Those are some of the ones we would highlight
Frederick Douglass. I read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass in college, not in like high school or anything.
I don't think I ever read that. We knew about Frederick Douglass in high school. I think Harriet Tubman might have been elementary school as well.
Yeah, I think you learn about her whenever you learn about the Civil War. You usually learn about Harriet Tubman. But, like, not a lot. Like, I feel like I've learned more stuff on my own as, like, as a school graduate than I ever could have hoped to learn.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the most comprehensive Black history I ever had was Sociology 101. It was a dual enrollment class when I was in high school. I took Sociology 101. And it wasn't even like all about Black history or Black culture, but that was a large part of it, and that's something sadly that was more than I've been taught
ever
in my schooling. Yeah.
I remember I took a class in college about the pre-war South, so like pre-bellum South, and we probably talked more about like slavery and the present day ramifications of slavery and things like that in that one class than in the rest of my schooling, like completely.
Okay.
And that was, those college classes are one semester. So
yeah, and I would say that I learned primarily about the civil rights movement whenever we talked about Black History Month. Sometimes there would be things about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, but it was primarily the civil rights movement, and it was always MLK and Rosa Parks.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I Have a Dream is probably one of the most common things that you'll ever like learn about in school, I think.
Yeah.
And I also feel like they make that sound like Rosa Parks did the bus, and then the next day, like Martin Luther King Jr. was giving that speech, and those are years apart.
Yeah, it's definitely truncated into
a very quick thing. But I mean, I've learned. I don't remember hearing until I was in college. I don't remember hearing about like Malcolm X.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I know in
absolutely not
Mississippi, by my parents' house, the airport was called Medgar Evers International Airport, which I guess I've known that for a long time, but I've never heard anyone talk about who Medgar Evers was.
Yeah, so we have around here is Booker T. Washington State Park.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was until like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I learned who Medgar Evers was like as an adult, and he was a civil rights activist who was assassinated in his front yard. Yeah,
nobody told me who Booker T was ever.
Yeah.
In college or in any of my schooling, and I went to school, middle and high school around here, and like a year in elementary school.
Yeah.
Near Booker T, but nobody ever explained who he was.
No, and it's so strange to me, like, you drive down, like, these roads, or you go to these parks, or whatever, and they're named after these people, and no one ever stops to explain to you, like, this person is this, and they have a road named after them, so people remember that, but no one remembers why.
And the only Black inventor I ever was taught was Washington Carver.
Yeah. Like, that's
George Washington Carver.
That's it. Sometimes I feel like they throw, like, one person into the history book so they can be like, we're inclusive, see?
Yeah.
And I'm like, But why do we have 17 chapters on George Cornwallis?
Right. And, you know, I feel like Black Americans have given, and we say Black History Month because we don't really say African American History Month because you don't have to be American to be
to have given so much stuff to
the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like there were so many other important contributions as far as inventions are concerned and patents and the like to highlight. I don't know why George Washington Carver is the one that they picked, other than people love peanut butter in America.
I love peanut butter.
In America. Yes, so I love peanut butter too.
Thank you for that, but also...
yeah, I mean, thank you, George Washington Carver. I'm just saying.
Peanut butter, but yeah, but that's
what was it, like 100 uses for peanut butter or something is always what they said?
Yeah. I need to read that, because, I mean, actually, I just eat it by the spoonful, but in case you didn't know, but there's so much other stuff, and there's amazing, like, authors and artists, musicians. I think that a lot of times...
That's true. We did learn about a few musicians, I think.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times now when people think of Black musicians, they're like, they're just rappers. And that's not true at all.
No.
That's not true at all.
In high school, I learned about Billie Holiday.
Oh, yeah, Billie Holiday.
I think I learned about a few of the jazz singers earlier than that. Maybe middle school, we learned about the jazz age.
I remember I'm kind of interested in the 27 Club, so I learned about Robert Johnson through that. He was like a blues musician, and he is
He's the Crossroads guy, right?
Yeah, he's like one of the first people that they said sold their soul to the devil in Mississippi Crossroads in order to be able to play well. So I was interested.
I think those legends are cool.
I do too. Led Zeppelin as well.
Yeah,
I really enjoy things like that. I think it's really interesting. And you know, he played in white bars as well.
Yeah.
Like, he was very famous back in his day. And this is like, I mean, we're talking like the 20s, 30s. Like, this is old. So he was very famous back in his day. But I think now a lot of people are like, you know, it's just rap, and that's not true.
Not at all. Not that there's anything wrong with rap. I like rap.
No, I like rap too.
Sugar Hill Gang is what jam on.
I mean, I like rap too, but that's not the only contributions to music or anything else. Even though I think a lot of times...
Basically everything. Jazz, blues, rock and roll.
Yeah. Like, literally everything. I just, like, pictured Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock, and I was like, wait, rock and roll, yes. I loved him. I mean, I love him. Like, I clearly didn't know him personally, but I love him. I think he's
so, did you learn about any of the bad stuff about Black history in school? Like, how much of the bad stuff did they talk about?
Like,
the bad stuff.
Like, do you mean like slavery or slavery? Do you mean like bad stuff like slavery and?
Yes.
Okay, so clearly I went to school.
Slavery, lynchings, the backlash against the civil rights movement, all of the bad stuff.
So I went to school in the Deep South. No shade to Louisiana's public school system or anything, but we talked about slavery in that, like, it happened and it was wrong, and everything is fine now. That is kind of how we talked about slavery. I don't remember when I learned about the Freedom Riders and, like, the Mississippi Summer where the 3 went missing. I don't remember when I learned about that, but I know that I have known about that for a good portion of my life. But that could also be something that I learned about at home, because we spent so much time in Mississippi. I know that we did not talk about, like, violent protests, like, and by violent protests I mean, like, there's a protest and then all of a sudden you're getting hosed by, like, fire.
That's what's interesting for me. I'm going to jump in there. So I did most of my schooling in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So middle school and high school and, like I said, some of elementary school. And Chattanooga, they were the first ones to use hoses on people who were protesting for the civil rights movement. I didn't learn about that until like 2 years ago.
No.
They never taught that, even though they're all gung-ho about teaching local history. They're like, Even though we have this significant thing that happened here, we're not going to talk about it. I never learned about the sit-ins that happened in Chattanooga.
I don't ever remember learning about anything that happened where I lived. I do remember them talking about like the lunch counter sit-ins and stuff. I remember learning a little bit about that.
They talked about that, but not about the ones that happened in Chattanooga, which they did.
I don't recall ever learning anything that happened where I lived. I think a lot of focus was usually put on places like Birmingham.
Okay.
Or Mobile, like Alabama, Mississippi, which we sat so close to those states. But never anything bad. I don't think we ever talked about the Klan or anything like that.
No.
I learned about, so most of the South, for me, Louisiana included, was basically ruled by the Klan for a very long time. Like, there's like shows about it. When History Channel used to play like history documentaries, they would always talk about the Klan ones, and they always talked about like Morehouse Parish and Ouachita Parish and like the Feliciana parishes and stuff in Louisiana, which were completely Klan controlled for a very long time. So I learned about that in my own time because we used to watch History Channel all the time. And I remember being like, is that real? And I also remember hearing about this. Where I grew up, there were 2 traffic circles a long time ago. So like 2 roundabouts, whatever you're going to call it, inventively named the North and South traffic circles.
Okay.
By the time I'm old enough to remember it, there was only the South Circle. There was some wetland issues inside of the circles. That's not important, but they used to burn crosses in the North traffic circle. And I remember hearing my parents talk about that in passing for some, I don't even remember why, and I was like, why would they do that? And they had to like sit me down and be like, right. But that's, like, we didn't talk about any of that in school. Yeah. And I think that that's why. Why don't you talk about any of that?
Yeah, so when I was in school, most of the bad stuff, it was basically guilt shuffling. So when I was in Ohio, the South were the bad guys. And they did all of this stuff.
Yeah, Alabama and Mississippi were bad. Louisiana was fine.
Yeah, and when I was in Tennessee, same thing. Well, yeah, we're the South, but not here.
But the deep South is where the trouble is.
But the deep South is the trouble.
And it's like, the whole country was the trouble.
Yeah. But it was very much guilt shuffling, like saying, well, our spot wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the South, but we're not the deep South. And the deep South are the bad guys. Yeah. And in Ohio, it was like, well, we're in the North, and the South were the bad guys. Yeah. And it was always shuffling the guilt somewhere else instead of owning up to the guilt, which is so weird to me because people think it's somehow like white guilt or making white people feel guilty. It's like, well, did you do it?
Well, and we weren't even close to being alive in the 50s and 60s when this stuff was happening.
Yeah, and even further back in the Civil War.
And people look at you like, well, I don't want you guys to feel bad that this happened, like your teachers. You know, I don't want you to feel bad that this happened.
Why should I feel guilty?
It wasn't my fault. I know, but I feel like that about some of these. Like, I wasn't even alive. Like, why would, like, I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah.
I feel sorry that happened.
But I should have been taught, not because you want to save some kids' feelings, because none of these kids did that stuff.
And like, I don't know, most of my teachers were white.
Most of mine.
So
I think all of my history teachers. I had black teachers, but they were often STEM teachers. Math and science.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I recall having mostly white teachers. I think I had one black history teacher for Louisiana history, but she ended up leaving like a couple months in, and then we just went to the library and read our history books.
No, now that I think about it, my social sciences and like my arts classes were all white teachers, but like a good amount of my STEM classes were black teachers. Science and math. I don't know, maybe just a weird thing about my school, just, that's just who was hired, but they were, like my math teacher and my science teacher, like my middle school science, like where you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Physical science, I think they called it.
I literally couldn't even pick out my middle school science teacher in a lineup if my life depended on it.
I could. I kind of thought he was cute.
I remember my freshman year we had a coach.
And then my math teacher, she left an impression.
Oh, my math teachers used to just make me sob. So like
we would all do like impressions of her. I won't do it here because I don't want to like
be rude.
Yeah. It wasn't like she had like mannerisms like of doing certain things, and so we would all do her like mannerisms.
I have a great teacher story, but this isn't the time to tell it, so we're gonna have to do a curator chat about
our teachers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I actually really liked you, Mrs. Gaines. 7th graders, saying your bell ringer is on the board. Is not us making, but you did do this a lot.
Yeah, I don't remember ever having black teachers.
And she would say something about being quiet, like you have to bring your level down. Like she would
like a child.
She would be like, you're at an 11, you need to bring it down.
That was such a thing, though. I think people would just be like, when we were younger. Wow, I make it sound like we're like in our 50s, like reminiscing on our
We're so old. Look at us. We're both wearing cardigans.
We really are. I just wore this. We filmed something for Valentine's Day today, so.
We're both wearing cardigans, so we are getting old.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Did you Black history?
Yeah. Did you live in a place like, I don't know, was Chattanooga or your school mostly white or
no?
No.
My elementary school was, but we were out in the suburbs. But to me it was a lot because I came from Ohio and we had one black kid in my entire school during elementary school. And when I came, it was probably like 60-30. Well, I mean, that doesn't add up completely. There were some other ethnicities there. But when I went to high school and middle school, it was about 50-50.
I think that's what mine was as well, about 50-50.
But that one was in downtown Chattanooga.
We had the bus thing where they bus different neighborhoods to different schools.
Oh, okay.
I think they actually got rid of doing that and let you pick your own school eventually, but by then I was out of the public school system, so we had an overcrowding problem at our school, and I was put into a private school because of that.
I went to a magnet school for middle and high school, so that wasn't really a zoning trying to...
Yeah.
I don't think the intention was to mix it that way. Like, I don't think that was purposeful because you had to audition to get in.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that would.
And you had to like choose to want to go to this school and choose to audition. And I think, everybody, people of every race like the arts.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and are talented in the arts. Like I wouldn't have gotten into your school. Did you see that? Like, oh, we know that.
Your love bug.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten into your school.
So I mean. And what were there like disparities between the majors? Yes, but there were a lot more black people in singing and dance, and a lot more white people in like creative writing and art. But not exclusively. It was noticeable. More white people in theater as well.
That's interesting.
Just an observation from my years there. It might be different now.
I literally don't remember anyone that I was like. I'm still friends with like one person from high school, and I really didn't like anybody when I was there, so I can't tell you what anyone was going to school for.
But yeah, I think that was kind of all my questions that I had lined up.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been 30 minutes, so.
Okay. And some of that was people interrupting and then us getting on tangents about our middle school math teachers.
We'll have to do a classroom one. But yeah, so I mean, clearly we haven't even scratched the surface, but I think that it's important to put our thoughts out there.
Yeah.
For like what we think about Black History Month and everything. I know that right now you have the exhibit in the members only portal of our website.
Yes.
That is Black History Month. The podcast.
It's Black History, but
Black History,
not just Black History Month.
For this month, our podcast and our book reviews are all going to be based around.
And they'll be up forever. They're not just there for Black History Month.
Yeah, they're up forever. We are just trying to make sure that we focus what we're doing.
And the Black History exhibit's been there for several months. It's in our members portal, not on our free website. Maybe we'll make it free.
Yeah. And the rest of the stuff will also be focused either around. Well, for the month, it will have they will have topics that kind of deal with Black history, and we're reading books by Black authors or about the Black experience. So we are
hopefully both.
Yes. Well, I'm still waiting on one book, but what can you do? The library holds a ridiculous here. So yeah. So we are trying our best. If there's anything that you would like us to touch on that we end up not touching on this month, let us know, and we'll make sure that we
follow up.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we put it out there because we like feedback.
Yep. So thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.